In this episode, we're going to get some movement happening. So the first thing we want to do is create a new game object, and we're going to create a 3D object, and we're going to create a sphere. We'll call this sphere player, and we'll center the player. So if we double click, you'll see that the player is right inside the ground, and that's because our ground is actually at the same location and is actually the same height. So if we actually grab the ground, drop down the Y position down to -1, because that'll make everything perfect. Cool. So we have our player at 0, 0, 0, and our player has a mesh renderer, which makes it look like that. It has a sphere collider, and just to make things pretty, let's create a new material. And we'll call this player temp. I just cannot stand that white color. And let's go over to the sphere and go over to material and drag the player temp color. Let's change that to a color you like. Let's just say, oh, that's pretty gross. Let's say, yep, red. Red works. You can see it pretty clearly. And then we're going to grab our player. You'll see it has a mesh renderer, it has a sphere collider, and if we press play, the game does nothing. We haven't told the game to do anything, so that's what we would expect. So if that's what's happening for you, hey, everything's working well. If we go to our console, we should have nothing here. Oh, we actually have two errors. The reference script unknown is on the behavior is missing, and a reference script on the behavior game object. Okay, so let's go over to our main camera. Let's just, oh, that's the script that we deleted, and it's still trying to access that, so we just need to remove that. Cool. It's good to see the debugging process sometimes. We press play again and go back to, sorry, get out of play mode and remove component and press play. Cool. Now our console should be absolutely free and clear. So we have our player, and our player just sits there, nothing happens, and that's because we haven't told the character to do anything. If we drag the character up, let's say a little bit, press play, nothing happens either because we haven't actually told Unity that we want gravity to affect this game object. And it's really easy to do that inside of Unity. We can just add something called a rigid body. So if we click on add component and click rigid body, not rigid body 2D, make sure it's rigid body, and we'll click use gravity and mass and just all the exact same settings that comes as default, and we press play. Bam, it falls down until it hits the collider that's on the ground, and it doesn't move any further. Awesome, now we have physics working in our game. Now, given they're not amazing physics, but they're still physics nonetheless. So now we want to go over to our scripts folder. We want to right click, we're going to create a new C# script, and we're going to call this player with a capital P. It's best practice to name your scripts with a capital, because that's the class name, and classes usually start as a capital. This is just good scripting practices. And so once we've created a script called player, we want to double click to open it in Visual Studio, and we can get to programming. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is just get the player to move. So I'll just zoom in a little bit. And we probably don't need the start. This we'll just leave the start and we'll go into the update. And what we want to do is we want to actually access this player. We want to access the component rigid body on the player, and we want to tell the rigid body to move it in a certain direction. We want to add a certain force in a certain direction. So if we go back over here, we can actually say get component. Inside these two little triangles, I forgot what they're called, type rigid body, open parentheses, close parentheses, dot velocity. So we want to just choose what the velocity is, and we just want to equal that to vector3 dot forward, and we want to times that by, let's say, 1,000. And we want to times that by time.delta time. So what's happening here is we're getting a component that this script is attached to. We're accessing the rigid body. we're accessing the velocity on the rigid body, and we're equaling that to a new vector 3.forward. So that just means that's just a direction. So we're saying the velocity equals this direction, and we're timesing that direction by 1,000, and then we're timesing that by time.delta time. Time.delta time is the time passed since the last frame. If you want something to move at a constant velocity, speed for instance, multiply that by time.delta time so you get consistent results. If we then save the script, and we go back over to Unity, we press play, nothing will happen. Well, our player will fall to the ground. But if we actually, and the reason nothing happened is because the script isn't actually attached to the game object. So what we can do is we can actually click on the player script and just drag it over. Or we could add component and we could type in player and you'll see our scripts popped up there. Either one works just fine. And let's get our player, let's drag them back down to Earth at 0. And let's press play and it should move forward. Awesome. Now it moves forward quite fast, and we can't control it yet. But in this episode, we have looked at how to get a script attached to a game object, and we've got that game object to move forward at a constant rate. And we've added some physics to that game object so it falls down from the sky. So everything is going well. In the next episode, we'll touch on how to control the ball and its direction.